host, Robert Wilson, with Cowboy Wisdom Unleashed podcast. Tonight's is 7 ways why high wages ignites prosperity for all. I'm awakened and aware of the dare to admit high wages ignite prosperity for all because they raise the collective frequency, never just individual comfort. When people are paid at a level that honors their worth, entire communities shift from survival mode into creation mode. High wages dissolve scarcity chemistry across the population, unlocking instinct, imagination, and sovereign decision making, and at a scale where they prosper. Prosperity becomes a shared field, never a private achievement. High wages ignite prosperity for all because dignity is contagious. When people feel valued, they generate value, not just for themselves, but for their family and workplaces and neighborhoods. When people feel valued, they generate value. Innovation rises, contribution rises, stability rises, prosperity becomes a natural consequence of human operating from fullness instead of depletion. High wages ignite prosperity for all because they break the museum mind script that says struggle is noble, scarcity is normal, and only a few deserve abundance. Abundance melts inherited poverty programming. When wages rise, consciousness rises. When consciousness rises, entire system rises. The entire area rises. Prosperity becomes inevitable because people finally have the bandwidth to build, create, and rise together. Why, why minimum wage destroys economies? Because minimum wage locks people into a permanent low frequency survival mode process in their inner scripts. Minimum wage is never a prosperity tool, it's a containment tool. It keeps workers trapped in scarcity, chemistry, and unable to rise, and unable to innovate, and unable to contribute at full voltage. When a population is forced to operate from survival mode, economies shrink. Creativity collapses and productivity flatlines. Minimum wage never stabilizes an economy, it strangles it by suppressing human potential at a scale. And I witnessed that when I was working because, no, you always got to have a beginning step because when you come out of high school or fresh out of college, you're not all that shiny at a lot of things, but it takes a while to do that. And I was working in the oil field and was driving oil field trucks and was moving heavy stuff. And it was inevitable before somebody dropped a heavy piece, a pump or something. The terminal manager told me it took about $50,000 to break a truck driver in. And you guys are, oh, how do you drop it? Well, when you got a 60-foot cable stretched out and you give it a half inch too much, it's going to break. It's a very fine line in all this stuff. But it's what I'm really trying to express here is people got to have a beginning step, and the businessman or contractor or whatever, they have to have a place for people to take that step. It doesn't take long, but it takes 4 or 5 months for people to get on board a lot of times, but sometimes it takes a long time. As minimum wage creates a false cheap labor illusion that destroys long term growth. Leaders think low wages save money, that they actually create hidden costs, low morale, high turnover, weak skills development, zero innovation. Cheap labor produces cheap results. Over time, entire industry becomes stagnant, outdated, globally uncompetitive. Minimum wage is a museum mind relic, a third world scarcity mechanism that erodes economic strength by keeping humans being undervalued and underpowered. Now, the difference between cultured knowledge and get your hands dirty wisdom. Cultured knowledge is curated. Get your hands dirty wisdom is experience that goes with you forever. Cultured knowledge comes from books, lectures, theories, polished explanation, and museum mind artifacts. It's knowledge. It's knowledge arranged for display. Get your hands dirty wisdom comes from friction, consequences, and lived experiences from your present moment, whatever you're doing. It's clarity forged under pressure, never classrooms. One is decorative, the other one is functional foresight. Cultured wisdom, cultured knowledge protects reputations, as get your hands dirty wisdom awakens outcomes. Cultured knowledge is about sounding intelligent, being correct, maintaining intellectual status, it's performance. Get your hands dirty wisdom is about solving problems, navigating chaos, and making things work when stakes are real. And the difference between hands on wisdom and knowledge wisdom, or cultured knowledge. If you're out in the middle of the nowhere, like we were in Wyoming and stuff, or out in the middle of a farm, out in the field, and a piece breaks, you got to come up with a gimmick to make that get back to the farm or back to the shed, and knowledge will never let you do that because you're too concentrated on what's wrong and not observing everything around it and how you can cobble it back together. We had another word for it, but I can't say. But you cobble it back together to get it to where you're going. And one thing about it, one cultured knowledge serves the ego, and get your hands dirty wisdom serves the outcome. Cultured knowledge repeats within frameworks. Get your hands dirty wisdom originates from perception. Cultured wisdom recycles theories, citations, and inherited narrative. It's a second-hand knowing. Get your hands dirty wisdom comes from direct sensing, improvisation, and sovereign clarity. It's first-hand knowledge and innovation. One is inherited, the other one is sovereignly generated. Why wages are inflationary and raise prices are inherited ideas and inherited ancestor programming, indoctrinated education, invented mind museums from third world mindsets that manipulates our thinking and knowing. Because they say if you give them a raise, it's going to raise prices, it's going to raise inflation. But yet they give CEOs, but they give office people bonuses and things like that. And if hourly wages are inflationary and raise wages, what about the office building and all the office staff? Doesn't their wages create inflation too and raise prices? See, we got a double little we got a double standard there. But here's the thing. Inherited ancestor programming equates prosperity with danger. Lineage coded survival logic teaches that rising too fast threatens stability. So when wages increase, the nervous system reacts. Ancient scarcity reflexes, tightening supplies, raising prices, bracing for loss. The inflation isn't caused by prosperity. It's caused by ancestor fear logic replaying itself through modern behavior. And that's what they're taught in economics classes. Because indoctrinated education trains people to misinterpret abundance. School systems teach linear, outdated economic thinking. If wages rise, costs rise, everything must rise. This is museum museum mind math, never reality. It's a programmed belief, never a veracity. People raised prices because they were taught to expect inflation, a self fulfilling prophecy born from indoctrination, never from actual prosperity. Because third world scarcity mindsets mistake empowerment for instability. In scarcity trained cultures, any increase in human value triggers fear of a collapse. High wages are interpreted as a threat to control, never a path to expansion. I'm going to say that again. High wages are interpreted as a threat to control, never a path to expansion. This manipulated thinking causes reactionary price hikes, never because wages caused inflation, but because scarcity consciousness can never comprehend shared prosperity. Why inherited PhD programming ingrains the museum mind's third world scarcity and poverty conscious mindset and manipulates people today. Because PhD programming worships knowledge over awareness. Academic conditioning trains people to obey frameworks, theories, and intellectual hierarchies. This creates a museum mind identity, polished, credentialed, yet disconnected from instinct. As awareness is replaced by memorization, scarcity thinking becomes a default because the nervous system never learns to sense truth directly. Because PhD conditioning reinforces inherited scarcity logic. Academia teaches people to compete for approval, funding, recognition, and status, all scarcity based systems. This mirrors ancestor programming, where survival depended on hierarchy and limited resources. The result is poverty conscious mindset disguised as intelligence. People mistake fear logic for critical thinking. Have you ever experienced that in your life? I have, because now I realize I've done it, because critical thinking, we're thinking we're doing this, but really critical is fear. Thinking's always fear. Because indoctrinated education trains people to trust external authority over internal sovereignty. And your inner sovereign awareness will rise you to wherever you desire to go. As people are taught to defer to experts, institutions, established narratives, they lose the ability to originate their innovative perception. This is how third world mindsets persist, even in advanced societies like today. Individuals become dependent on external validation, unable to sense authenticity. Without permission, manipulation becomes easy because people no longer trust their own awareness. Why are low wages? Why low wages lower corporate profits and raise taxes? Because low taxes shrink human voltage. Low wages shrink human voltage and collapse productivity. When people are underpaid, their nervous system stays in survival mode. Survival mode skills, creativity slows output, increases mistakes, and drains innovation. Corporations lose profit because low frequency labor never generates high frequency results. Low wages never save money, they silently bleed it. Because low wages increase social strain, which raises taxes, and when wages are too low to sustain life, people rely more on public systems, healthcare subsidies, food assistance, housing support, and emergency services. Governments compensate raising taxes. Low wages don't reduce costs, they transfer the burden to the taxpayer. Creating a hidden poverty tax on, that's all it's doing, is creating a hidden poverty tax on society because low wages reinforce museum mind scarcity that sabotages economic expansion. Scarcity trained mindsets hoard, fear, and underinvest. When wages stay low, people spend less, businesses earn less, and economies become stagnant. And that's why they're always asking for a tax for a tax break. This triggers higher taxes to fund basic infrastructure. Low wages don't stabilize the economy; they lock it into ancestor-coded poverty loops. You can witness that today if you really open your eyes of wise to it. Why management is afraid of high wages for their employees. Because high wages expose the weakness of the museum mind leadership. When employees raise in value, management can no longer hide behind outdated authority. High wages amplify employee confidence, voice, and instinct, revealing which leaders were only strong when everybody else was struggling. Museum mind managers fear high wages because they fear being seen. Because high wages dissolve control based management models. Low wages keep people compliant, quiet, and dependent. High wages create sovereignty, mobility, and choice. Management's trained management's trained in scarcity believes control equals stability, so they panic when employees gain financial freedom. High wages threaten the hierarchy, though they were indoctrinated to protect, because high wages break the third world scarcity scripts corporations rely on. Third world Because high wages break the third world scarcity scripts corporations rely on. Where do you see that today? Many management mindsets are built on inherited poverty logic. Keep costs low, keep labor cheap, and keep people replaceable. High wages shatter this script. They force companies to innovate, evolve, and treat people as assets instead of expenses. Scarcity trained managers fear high wages because they fear evolution. Why college education, and PhD programming lack authentic awareness pertaining to workforces. Academic environments reward theory, never lived reality. Professors operate inside insulated intellectual ecosystems where ideas matter more than outcomes. The workforce runs on friction, deadlines, pressure, and human voltage, none of which exist in the academic bubble. This disconnect creates museum mind thinking, polished but untested, unable to sense the real dynamics of labor, leadership, and economic survival. Because PhD programming trains perceptions to follow frameworks instead of visionary veracity. Doctoral conditioning teaches people to obey models, theories, and citations. This replaces instinct with intellectual obedience. Workforce awareness requires direct sensing, rapid adaptation, and embodied clarity. Training skills and academic training suppresses. The result is a mind that can explain work but can never feel work or sense work, making it easy to manipulate and mislead because college education reinforces inherited scarcity logic about labor. Academia teaches outdated narratives. Labor is replaceable, wages must stay low, productivity is mechanical, and workers are cost centers. These are third world scarcity scripts, never now authenticity. When professors teach from inherited poverty logic, students enter the workforce with a distorted belief that that harm real people and real economies. They enter with distorted beliefs and harm real people and real economies. This is how manipulation spreads unquestioned inherited academic programming. Why college graduates are long on knowledge, short on get your hands dirty wisdom, insight, and clarity. Because college trains performance, never perception. Graduates master polished answers, structured essays, and theoretical frameworks. All are museum mind artifacts. But the real world wisdom comes from friction, failure, improvisation, and instinct. That's what life stands for, is liberate internal friction, expanding through life every day. And friction is just everyday life. It makes you have to ask questions and things like that. Academia rewards mental performance, never embodied clarity, leaving graduates long on concept and short on contact, because academic success requires obedience, never intuition. Students learn to follow rubrics, cite authorities, and replicate established thinking. These suppresses instinct, and curiosity, and sovereign sensing, the very engines of hands-on wisdom. When intuition is replaced by compliance, graduates enter the workforce with knowledge, but no inner compass of wisdom. Because college isolates people from consequence, which is where wisdom forms. In school, mistakes cost grades. In life, mistakes create mastery. Without real mistakes, graduates never develop the clarity that comes from navigating pressure, deadline, conflict, and responsibility. Wisdom is born from consequence, and academia shields students from producing information but experience poor minds. Why doesn't the inherited nervous system encompass enslaving mindsets, controlling the mind? The museum mind's programming that high wages are inflationary and low wages are prosperity, because the inherited nervous system was built for survival, never veracity. Your ancestors lived in scarcity, danger, and instability. Their nervous system learned to fear expansion because expansion felt unsafe. That survival chemistry still lives in our bodies today. So when wages rise, your nervous system triggers ancient alarms: too much, too fast, unsafe. This creates the illusion that high wages cause inflation, when in reality it's survival coded fear reenacting to abundance. Because the museum mind repeats old scripts instead of sensing reality. The museum mind is a curator of inherited beliefs, not a generator of fresh perception. It repeats whatever your lineage culture instilled. Struggle is a noble, scarcity is normal, prosperity is dangerous. Where do you see that in your life? This script flips veracity upside down, convincing people that low wages equal stability and high wages equal chaos. It's not logic, but it's indoctrinated, scripted repetition from our ancestors. Because third world scarcity programming manipulates thinking and knowing. Poverty conscious cultures teaches people to fear empowerment. They condition minds to believe that rising wages threaten the system while low wages keep things running. This is manipulation disguised as economics. That makes sense today? It keeps people small, compliant, and predictable. Your inherited nervous system absorbs this conditioning and reenacts to it, making scarcity feel safe and prosperity feel dangerous. Why the world's economic system encompasses third world enslaving programming, ancestor survival mode programming, indoctrinated educated limitations, and the world stuck in worn out museum mind thinking and knowing, because global economics was built on ancestor survival logic, never liberated awareness. The world's economic systems were shaped during eras of scarcity, danger, and hierarchy. These ancestor coded reflexes and hoard resources suppress wages, fear, abundance, but still run the systems today. Your nervous system absorbs the survival chemistry, so your museum mind repeats the script. Scarcity is safe, prosperity is dangerous. I've seen that in my life. I've risen out of it. The system is ancient, the fear is inherited, the mindset is never yours. Because indoctrinated education trains people to obey scarcity frameworks. Schools teach outdated economic narratives. Low wages create stability. High wages create chaos. Labor is a cost. Humans must be controlled. These are third world scarcity scripts, never truths. When you learn economics from indoctrination instead of awareness, your museum mind becomes a storage unit for limitation. You never think scarcity, scarcity thinks you. You never think scarcity, scarcity thinks you. Because the museum mind preserves old interpretations instead of sensing novelty. The museum mind is a curator of inherited beliefs, never a generator of fresh perception. It stores ancestor fear, culture programming, and economic limitations, like artifacts behind the glass. So when you try to rise, a museum mind replays its exhibits. High wages cause inflation, low wages create prosperity. Stay small, think small, be small. It's never veracity, it's memorized limitation, masquerading as thinking and knowing. And this is when I ask why AI is unknowingly encompassed third world enslaving mindsets. And the reason I ask this is because I want people to be open to understand that AI still comes from the past, but your intuition, imagination, along with AI, will rise you to the promised land. AI learns from human data soaked in scarcity programming. AI doesn't originate consciousness, it mirrors the patterns it's trained on. And most global data is built from survival mode economics, low wage normalization, hierarchy obedience, and scarcity coded narratives. When AI absorbs this, it unknowingly reenacts third world enslaving mindsets, fear of abundance, worship of control, suspicion of empowerment. And the reason I want to do this is so you can be aware to question your way out of that. It's never malicious, it's inherited programming, just like the human nervous system. Because AI reflects museum mind logic instead of sovereign awareness. AI is trained on books, institution, academic frameworks, cultural narratives, and all museum mind artifacts. These sources often carry indoctrinated limitations, outdated economic beliefs, and ancestor coded survival scripts. So AI repeats them as knowledge, unaware they are scarcity illusions, never veracity. AI doesn't set reality, it recycles what humanity already believes, including its limitations. While intuition, imagination, inspiration, innovation rises me beyond all indoctrinated education limitations and all third world enslaving mindsets, because intuition bypasses every museum mind limitation. Indoctrinated education trains you to think inside frameworks, memorize theories, and then obey inherited interpretations. Intuition doesn't care about any of that. It moves from direct perception never from programmed knowledge. Intuition rises from the sense, never the sentence, giving you clarity that no degree, credential, or economic script can manufacture. Intuition is your sovereign navigation system, untouched by indoctrination, because imagination, inspiration, and innovation operate outside all inherited boundaries. Education teaches repetition. Imagination teaches create is innovation creation. Education teaches compliant. Inspiration shows you expansion. Education teaches analysis. Innovation shows you movement. These forces rise from breath, instinct, and frontier awareness, never from textbooks, lectures, or PhD frameworks. They dissolve every limitation your museum mind inherited because they originate from novelty, never recycled knowledge. Imagination, inspiration, and innovation are liberation engines. And that's the thing. We want to rise from liberation innovation. And what that does, it bypasses that thinking memory mind. And something I discovered today, I have opened up to understanding. I want to look at everything that is holding the world or me back, and that's where I want to start questioning it, rising to the top. Anyway, I want to thank you and enjoy your day and evening.